Let me ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself. How many of you are taking a thyroid pill every single morning, dutifully, without missing a day, and yet you still feel like something inside you is off? Still exhausted by 2 in the afternoon, still gaining weight no matter how carefully you eat, still freezing cold when everyone else in the room is perfectly comfortable, still foggy, still flat, still just not yourself. If that's you, I want you to know something right now. And I say this after over 30 years of practicing medicine and seeing thousands of patients in my clinic in India and around the world. You are not imagining things. Your medication is not failing because your doctor chose the wrong one. It is failing because the medication was never designed to fix the root cause. It replaces the hormone, but it does absolutely nothing about the reason the thyroid stopped producing it in the first place. And here is the part that will either frustrate you or set you free, depending on how you look at it. In the vast majority of cases, the reason your thyroid broke down in the first place is something you are still doing today. Something completely ordinary. Something you do every single day without a second thought. Welcome, my friends. I am Dr. Usaid, and today we are going to go deep together. I mean truly deep, not the surface-level stuff you find in a 5-minute video or a glossy health article. Today you are going to understand your thyroid like you never have before. Because your thyroid is not just a little butterfly-shaped gland sitting in your neck. It is the master thermostat of your entire body. And if we want to fix it, we need to understand every single part of the system it belongs to. So, before we count down these 10 habits, let me give you the foundation, because this is where most people get lost, and I refuse to let that happen to you today. Understanding the full thyroid system. Most people think of the thyroid as just the gland, but your thyroid function is a chain, and if any link in that chain is broken, the whole thing collapses. It starts in the brain, in a region called the hypothalamus, which releases a signal hormone called TRH. Think of it as the first domino. That signal travels to the pituitary gland, which responds by releasing TSH, the thyroid-stimulating hormone. TSH then tells your thyroid gland to get to work and produce its hormones. Now here is where it gets fascinating. Your thyroid primarily produces a hormone called T4. But T4 is essentially inactive. It is a storage form, a kind of hormone that is not yet ready to do its job. For it to actually work, it must be converted into T3, which is the active, powerful version. That conversion happens mostly in your liver, about 60% of it, and about 20% in your gut. The remaining 20% happens in various peripheral tissues. So your liver and gut health are directly tied to your thyroid function. Most doctors never mention that. And then there is the concept of reverse T3, RT3. This is what happens when your body essentially makes a decoy hormone. Reverse T3 has the same shape as active T3, but it is like a key that fits the lock but cannot open the door. It blocks the receptor and prevents the real T3 from doing anything. Your body actually produces more reverse T3 when it perceives stress, starvation, or danger, as a way of slowing everything down to conserve energy. And finally, for all of this to work, you need the right raw materials. Iodine, the amino acid tyrosine, and 3 critical minerals, selenium, zinc, and iron. Without these, the entire manufacturing process grinds to a halt. Now, let us count down the 10 habits that are breaking this chain every single day, and what you can actually do about it. Habit number 10. Not eating enough fat. I know. For decades, fat was the villain. We were told fat was dangerous, fat was the enemy. And what happened? An entire generation of people grew up terrified of eating eggs and butter. and thyroid disease exploded. Let me explain why. When you significantly restrict dietary fat, or when you drop your calories too aggressively, your body reads that as a signal of famine. It does not know you are on a diet. It thinks the food supply is running out, and its protective response is to slow everything down. It lowers the metabolic thermostat. And the very first casualty? Thyroid hormone conversion. Your body converts less T4 into active T3, and at the same time, it ramps up production of that inactive reverse T3 I just described. So you can have beautiful T4 levels on a blood test and still be functionally hypothyroid because the conversion simply is not happening. Fat is not your enemy. Healthy fats, from avocados, fatty fish, olive oil, eggs, nuts, are literally building blocks for hormone production. If you have been restricting them, it is time to rethink that completely. Habit number 9. Drinking unfiltered tap water. This one surprises people. Because we have been told that fluoride is good for our teeth and that chlorine keeps our water safe. And on some narrow level, those things have some validity. But what nobody talks about is what happens inside your thyroid when these chemicals accumulate in your body. Fluorine, chlorine, and iodine belong to the same chemical family, the halogens. They compete with each other for the same absorption pathways in your body. The more fluoride and chlorine you take in, the less iodine your thyroid can absorb. And since iodine is the single most essential raw material for thyroid hormone production, this is not a minor inconvenience. It is a direct block. Now, what most people do not know, and I find this remarkable every time I share it, is that fluoride was actually used as a medical treatment for overactive thyroid from the 1,850 seconds all the way through the 1,950 seconds. Because physicians discovered that just 2 to 5 milligrams of fluoride per day was enough to meaningfully suppress thyroid function in most patients. And 2 liters of average tap water today contains somewhere around 1.4 milligrams of fluoride. You are almost in therapeutic dosing range every single day. Add the fluoride toothpaste most people use twice a day, and if you are not sure, please go check the back of your toothpaste tube right now. In fine print, you will find a warning that says, if the product is accidentally swallowed, contact a poison control center immediately. They know what they put in it. The solution? Install an activated carbon filter for your shower and home water to remove chlorine, and a reverse osmosis filter for your drinking water to eliminate fluoride. It is an investment, but your thyroid will thank you for life. Habit number 8. Eating unfermented soy products. Before you protest, I am not saying soy is evil across the board, but there is a crucial distinction that the food industry does not want you thinking too carefully about. Unfermented soy, meaning the soy protein isolate that fills your protein powders, protein bars, plant-based meat products, and soy milk, contains compounds called isoflavones, specifically genistein and daidzein, that actively suppress the enzyme TPO, which is thyroid peroxidase. Thyroid peroxidase is the workhorse enzyme that literally assembles thyroid hormones inside the gland. When it is inhibited, hormone production drops. And, as if that were not enough, these same isoflavones also block iodine absorption. So you are hit from 2 sides simultaneously. The interesting thing is that Asian populations, Japan in particular, have been consuming soy for centuries without this problem, because they eat it fermented. Miso, tempeh, natto. Fermentation breaks down these goitrogenic isoflavones and neutralizes them almost completely. The problem is that the rest of the world industrialized soy consumption and stripped away the very process that made it safe. Check your protein powders and packaged health foods. If soy protein isolate appears in the first few ingredients, it is time to find an alternative. Hemp, pea protein, or collagen peptides are all excellent options. Habit number 7. Too much cardio or chronic overtraining. I have had patients, dedicated, disciplined people, who ran marathons and did an hour of intense cardio 6 days a week and wondered why they felt worse and worse with each passing year. This is one of the most counterintuitive things in medicine. We are told exercise is always good, but there is a dose, and exceeding that dose causes harm. Prolonged, intense cardiovascular training, especially the kind where your heart rate climbs to 140, 150, 160 beats per minute and stays there for an hour or more, generates a sustained cortisol response. And cortisol, the primary stress hormone, is one of the most potent suppressors of thyroid function that exists. It reduces TSH secretion from the pituitary. It increases reverse T3 production. It impairs T4 to T3 conversion. And it depletes the very micronutrients, selenium, zinc, magnesium, that your thyroid needs to function. Your body, at high stress and high energy expenditure, makes the metabolic decision that reproduction and thyroid output are luxuries it cannot afford right now. So it downregulates them. The irony is devastating. You are working harder to get healthy, and the mechanism of your hard work is making you sicker. Now here is what actually helps. Short, intense bursts of effort. Think 20-minute strength training sessions, sprints, or HIIT protocols, followed by ample rest. These brief, intense efforts actually stimulate beneficial hormone responses, including growth hormone, and help restore thyroid sensitivity. Combined with long, slow walks in nature, which are genuinely therapeutic for the nervous system, this is the movement prescription your thyroid needs. Not punishment, nourishment. Habit number 6. A diet deficient in selenium, zinc, and iodine. These 3 nutrients are not optional accessories for thyroid health. They are load-bearing walls. Remove any one of them, and the whole structure starts to crack. Let us start with selenium, because this one is criminally underappreciated. Selenium is required for the enzyme called deiodinase, the enzyme that removes one iodine molecule from T4 to activate it into T3. No selenium, no activation. But selenium also produces something called glutathione peroxidase, which is your thyroid's internal cleanup crew. Every time thyroid hormones are manufactured, hydrogen peroxide is produced as a byproduct. Hydrogen peroxide is highly reactive and abrasive. It is actually what your immune cells use to destroy pathogens. Inside the delicate tissue of the thyroid gland, it causes oxidative damage. Glutathione peroxidase neutralizes that hydrogen peroxide before it can do harm. But only if there is sufficient selenium to make it. Brazil nuts are the most concentrated food source. Just 2 to 3 per day can meet your daily requirement. But most people are severely deficient, especially those eating a modern Western diet stripped of nutrient-dense soils. Zinc is equally critical and works at multiple points along the chain. It is required for the hypothalamus to properly signal via TRH at the very top of the cascade. It is needed for T4 to T3 conversion, and it is required for the thyroid hormone receptor itself to function and open the door into the cell. Zinc deficiency is extraordinarily common. Red meat, shellfish, especially oysters, pumpkin seeds, and lentils are your best allies here. And iodine, the fundamental building block. The thyroid has the highest concentration of iodine of any tissue in the human body, because it needs it to literally assemble the hormone molecules. T4 has 4 iodine atoms. T3 has 3. Without iodine, there is no hormone, period. Seaweed, fish, dairy products, and iodized salt are key sources. But here is where I must pause, because iodine supplementation in thyroid disease is a nuanced conversation, and I will address it in depth when we reach habit number 1. Habit number 5. Eating too many omega-6 oils. Take a look in your kitchen right now. Sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil. These are everywhere, in every processed food, restaurant kitchen, and supermarket shelf. They are cheap. They are industrially produced. And they are silently fueling a chronic inflammation fire that scorches your thyroid along with everything else. Our ancestors, for all of human history until roughly 100 years ago, consumed omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in roughly a 1-to-1 ratio. Today, the modern diet delivers a ratio closer to 20-to-1, sometimes higher. 20 times more omega-6 than omega-3. This creates a massive overproduction of arachidonic acid, the precursor to inflammatory prostaglandins and leukotrienes, the molecular messengers of tissue destruction. Now, inflammation affects every organ. But here is why the thyroid is particularly vulnerable. Most thyroid disease is autoimmune in nature. Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which I will discuss further in just a moment, is driven by an overactivated immune system attacking the thyroid gland. And chronic omega-6-driven inflammation pours fuel directly onto that autoimmune fire. It amplifies immune activation, accelerates tissue damage, and makes the entire condition harder to control.
The solution is not complicated, but it does require intention.
Replace seed oils with olive oil, coconut oil, butter, or ghee for cooking. Increase your omega-3 intake aggressively through fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, or a high-quality fish oil supplement. Aim to shift that ratio back toward where your biology was designed to live. Habit number 4. Sleep deprivation and blue light exposure at night. I want you to think about your evening routine. You finish dinner, you sit on the sofa, and for the next 2 or 3 hours you are staring at a television, scrolling through a phone, working on a laptop. The light from these screens is predominantly in the blue wavelength spectrum. And blue light does one thing with extraordinary efficiency. It suppresses melatonin production. Now, most people know melatonin helps with sleep. But what very few people know is that melatonin directly protects thyroid tissue from oxidative damage. It is a potent antioxidant inside the thyroid gland itself. When you suppress melatonin night after night, you are literally withdrawing the protection your thyroid relies on to survive the daily wear and tear of hormone production. But there is more. Your TSH, the pituitary hormone that commands your thyroid to produce, follows a precise circadian rhythm. It peaks between approximately 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. And here is the critical part. That peak only occurs during sleep. If you are awake and exposed to light during those hours, the TSH surge is blunted. Your thyroid receives fewer instructions to produce. Output drops. And over months and years, this adds up to significant, measurable suppression of thyroid function. Research has shown that shift workers, people who work through the night and sleep during the day, have significantly higher rates of thyroid disorders than the general population. I know some of you watching may work night shifts, and I understand this is not simply a choice you can reverse tomorrow. But awareness matters, because even for shift workers, strategic blue light management, sleep hygiene, and well-timed melatonin support can make a meaningful difference. For the rest of you, blue light blocking glasses after sunset, phones down an hour before bed, and sleeping in true darkness are not luxuries. They are medicine. Habit number 3. Living under chronic stress. I want to be direct with you here, because I think chronic stress is the most underestimated driver of thyroid dysfunction in the world today. And it operates on every level of the system simultaneously. When cortisol is chronically elevated, and I mean the low-grade, constant, simmering kind of stress that comes from financial pressure, relationship conflict, work demands, never truly resting. It orchestrates a coordinated attack on thyroid function that is almost breathtaking in its thoroughness. The pituitary releases less TSH, so the thyroid gets fewer orders. The liver converts less T4 into active T3. The production of reverse T3, that inactive decoy hormone, surges. And the thyroid-binding globulin that carries hormone through your bloodstream increases, meaning less free, active hormone is available to actually reach your cells. From your body's perspective, chronic stress looks like running from a predator indefinitely. And when you are running for your life, your metabolism does not need to be optimized. It needs to be conserved. So the body systematically dismantles thyroid activity as a survival adaptation. The things that genuinely move the needle here, and I have seen this transform lives in my clinic, are breathwork practices like slow diaphragmatic breathing and box breathing, regular time in nature, adequate time between work and sleep, and honest conversations about what in your life is generating the most pressure. Sometimes the most powerful thyroid medicine is a boundary you have been afraid to set. Habit number 2. Eating gluten, especially with Hashimoto's. Here is a statistic I want to anchor this entire section in. Up to 90% of hypothyroid cases in the Western world are autoimmune in origin, meaning the immune system is attacking and destroying the thyroid gland. The most common form is called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and the most common dietary trigger for Hashimoto's? Gluten. Let me explain the mechanism, because it is extraordinarily elegant, in a terrible way. The protein structure of gliadin, the fraction of gluten that causes immune reactions, is molecularly similar to thyroid peroxidase, the enzyme responsible for building thyroid hormones. So when your immune system mounts an attack against gluten, it simultaneously cross-reacts with thyroid tissue. This is called molecular mimicry, and it is one of the best established mechanisms in autoimmune medicine. But it does not stop there. Gluten, particularly the modern hybridized wheat strains used in industrial food production, triggers the release of a gut protein called zonulin, which loosens the tight junctions between intestinal cells. This creates what clinicians call intestinal permeability. You may have heard it called leaky gut. When the gut barrier breaks down, partially digested food proteins, bacterial fragments, and toxins enter the bloodstream directly. The immune system encounters these foreign invaders and mounts an inflammatory response that further drives autoimmune activation. It is a vicious cycle, and gluten can be the match that lights the whole fire. In my clinical practice, we always test thyroid antibodies, anti-TPO and anti-thyroglobulin, because this information is essential. If your antibodies are elevated, you do not have a thyroid problem alone. You have an autoimmune problem that is expressing itself in the thyroid, and no amount of thyroid medication will fix an autoimmune disease. Removing gluten, rigorously, not casually, is often the single most powerful intervention for reducing antibody levels and slowing the destruction. There is also the gut microbiome angle. Healthy gut bacteria are responsible for approximately 20% of T4 to T3 conversion in your body. Gluten, combined with sugar and seed oils in the modern diet, devastates the gut microbiome, directly impairing your thyroid's ability to produce active hormone, even when the gland itself is functional. Habit number 1. Insulin resistance and blood sugar dysregulation. We have arrived at number 1, and I want you to understand why this is at the top of the list. Because it creates a cascade that compounds every single other problem I have described today. Insulin resistance, which affects an estimated 1 in 3 adults in many Western countries, often without a formal diagnosis, means your cells have stopped responding properly to insulin. The body compensates by pumping out more insulin, and chronically elevated insulin triggers systemic inflammation. Now here is the chain reaction. Inflammation impairs thyroid hormone receptor sensitivity, meaning even if you have adequate T3 in your bloodstream, the cells cannot respond to it properly. And simultaneously, insulin resistance creates fatty infiltration of the liver. And remember, the liver handles 60% of your T4 to T3 conversion. A congested, inflamed liver is a conversion factory that has been shut down.
And then there is the blood sugar roller coaster itself.
When your blood sugar crashes after a spike, from refined carbohydrates, sweetened drinks, snacks high in sugar, your body releases a surge of cortisol to raise glucose levels back to safety. And we have already established what cortisol does to every level of thyroid function. It suppresses TSH. It increases reverse T3. It impairs T4 to T3 conversion. You experience the triple penalty simultaneously every time your blood sugar crashes. The path forward here is not a complicated prescription. It is fundamentally about stabilizing blood sugar through whole foods, reducing refined carbohydrates and sugars, eating adequate protein and fat at each meal, minimizing snacking to allow insulin levels to drop between meals, and moving your body regularly. These simple metabolic fundamentals, consistently applied, can dramatically restore thyroid function without a single medication change.
The iodine question. What nobody is telling you.
Before I close, I promised to return to iodine, because this is where I see the most confusion, the most well-intentioned harm, and the most heated debates in thyroid medicine. And I want to give you the complete, honest picture. Iodine is essential. Without it, the thyroid literally cannot build its hormones. In regions of the world where soil iodine is depleted and food is not fortified, iodine deficiency causes the thyroid to enlarge into what is called a goiter, the gland desperately expanding its surface area, trying to capture every last iodine molecule available. This is a classic, well-described clinical picture. In that context, iodine supplementation is the correct intervention.
But here is where it gets complicated. If you have Hashimoto's, and remember, most hypothyroid patients do, often without knowing it because antibody testing is rarely ordered, taking high-dose iodine can accelerate the autoimmune destruction rather than reverse it. Here is why. When you provide more iodine, the TPO enzyme increases its activity. That produces more hydrogen peroxide as a byproduct. If selenium is insufficient to neutralize that hydrogen peroxide with glutathione peroxidase, oxidative damage inside the thyroid tissue increases. And more oxidative damage means more tissue inflammation, which means the immune system sees more damaged thyroid cells to attack, and the antibody count climbs even higher. You have effectively given your immune system more ammunition. So the protocol I follow for patients with elevated antibodies is this.
First, we address the autoimmunity, reduce inflammation, heal the gut, remove gluten, correct selenium deficiency. We bring the antibody numbers down. Only then do we introduce iodine, cautiously, starting at low doses and always paired with adequate selenium. And during this process, it is sometimes necessary to use thyroid medication to take the load off the gland while the immune system calms down. This is medicine with nuance. This is treating the person, not just the lab value. My friends, what I hope you are feeling right now is not overwhelmed, but empowered. Because what we did today is something extraordinary. We followed the entire chain of your thyroid function, from your brain, to your liver, to your gut, to your individual cells, and we identified precisely where the weak links are and why. You now know that thyroid healing is not about finding the right pill. It is about removing the obstacles your body is fighting every single day. The fluoride in your tap water, the unfermented soy in your protein powder, the chronic cardio that floods your system with cortisol, the blue light keeping your melatonin suppressed, the gluten triggering molecular mimicry against your own thyroid tissue, the blood sugar spikes igniting inflammatory cascades, The missing selenium, leaving your thyroid defenseless against oxidative damage.
Every single item on this list is within your power to address. Not all at once. That is not how healing works. But one choice at a time. One habit replaced at a time. Your body has an extraordinary capacity to restore itself. I have seen it happen more times than I can count in 30 years of practice. I have watched patients reduce their antibody counts by hundreds of points through dietary change alone. I have watched people come off thyroid medication they were told they would take for life, not because we forced it, but because the gland recovered when the obstacles were removed. That is what I want for you. Not dependency, sovereignty. The authority over your own biology that comes from truly understanding what your body needs and what it is fighting against. Now, I want to ask you something in the comments below. Of these 10 habits, which one are you guilty of right now? Which one surprised you the most? Tell me specifically, because your answers help me understand what the next deep dive should be. And this community grows stronger every time one of you shares an honest truth. If this video has given you something real today, and I believe it has, then I ask you to do one thing. Press that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Not for me, for yourself. Because the next masterclass I release could be the one that changes everything for you. For your mother, for your spouse, for the person you love who has been suffering quietly for years. You want to be there for that. Until then, eat real food, sleep in the dark, move with intention, and remember, your body is not your enemy. It has been working against enormous obstacles to protect you. Give it what it needs, remove what is harming it, and it will do the rest.
I am Dr. Usaid. I will see you at the next summit.